I remember I've written down on this little board over here some of the things I've screwed up on the air. I made the comment when it got out that the Oilers might be moving to Nashville, that hell would freeze over before we would get an NFL team. I have predicted the National League to win the All-Star game each of the last 9 years. And I told you on the air the day after you took the Duke job that it was a mistake, and you proved me dead wrong. How?
Let me tell you about the last one. They were going to send a private plane to pick me up for the interview. I said, no, that's okay. I was driving a white pickup truck at the time, so I drove my pickup truck over the mountain. And the interview was going to be with the president at like 8 o'clock, 8 a.m. So I got there. I'd never seen Duke's campus. I got there at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I think this had a part of us being successful. I walked that campus. I walked over to the facilities and almost cried.
Woo. It was rough.
It was rough. But I went into the chapel and I ran into a man that I'm very much love now. And I met Oscar, who was the head custodian of the chapel. And I asked him, what do you do? He said, I own the chapel. And he wasn't kidding, because the pride he took and what he told me about working at Duke, and told me about the president, who the president later gave him the Presidential Medal for commitment, dedication, and success as a Duke employee. Man, I just had a feeling that came over me. So I called Karen before they had offered me the job, and I said, I'm going to take this job. And she said, well, have they offered you? I said, not yet, but they will. And it wasn't arrogance. You know how you just know something. But I did drive the truck in case halfway there, if I changed my mind, I wanted to turn around, or if I really hated what I saw, I could go back home.
And you had reason to. Before you ever took the job, I was doing a package of Georgia Tech games, and we played over at Duke in front of my fan club. About 6 people. It was one of the sadder deals that I had seen. So when did you start to say, after you took the job, wait a minute, I can make this work. This is going to be good?
Well, I took 2 things. I first of all hired a good staff. Okay, that you can't win in college football without great assistant coaches and great communication. You've got to say what you mean and mean what you say. So our very first workout, the day we got everybody in, I had the staff just step back and watch. And the people that were running the strength and conditioning program at the time put them through kind of like a morning run. And I stopped it, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes into a 40-minute workout. I called them all up. I called these coaches in because I was making sure they didn't run out the door after what they saw. And I said, you know what, guys? I thought we could help you and teach you a little bit about winning. But I had no idea that we were going to have this much impact. Wow. And they're thinking like, hey, this new guy likes us, you know. And then I said, you guys are the fattest, softest football team I've ever seen in my life. We're going to all go in there and weigh, and then we're going to go to work. And you know what? They hadn't won at home. That was, I don't know, 2000. What was my first year? 2008. They hadn't won a home game since September 17th, 2005. They had won 10 games in the previous 8 years. And I said, we're going to go to work. And, man, did we go to work. And we had a great staff. We brought in Noel Durfee and some other strength coaches and people that were great at what they did. That team collectively lost over 500 pounds from the day we reported in August.
Wow.
We opened with James Madison, who had previously won the FCS National Championship and beat them badly. And we had those kids then. They believed in discipline. They believed in conditioning. How do you change a culture? people use that word without knowing what a culture is. A culture suggests a lot of people with similar habits, whether it's eating or what time they wake up or, how, it's a culture. Well, the culture of Duke football became discipline and conditioning. They started demanding it of each other. They bought into who we were and what we were doing. You're not going to get better unless you practice better. And Coach Aristotle was the first great coach, so he had to be a coach to make the statement, excellence is not an act. We become what we repeatedly do. So he was repping something really good, and we became a good football program.
I'm looking at Watson over there.
He's back?
I don't know. Should we try it?
Watson, can you hear us?
Hey, everybody. You got me?
Hey.
Beautiful. Watson, first of all, most of you all probably have figured this out. This is one of both Watson and my favorite interviews. One of the all-time good human beings that God ever put on this earth. Watson, say hello to him, then we'll go to the break, and then you get the entire next segment. I promise. Sort of.
David, how are you, man?
Coach Brown, now that I'm looking at you and not George, I'm really happy.
Wow. That's what I said.
Hey, HBO, man, halfback option. This guy did more to change the game and create completion percentage, coach the quarterback. I mean, what a great history you had yourself coming through the ranks. But thank you for changing the game and making it a college football better game.
Well, David, that's nice of you. And I'm just so proud of you through what all you've done here in your years, and hope you're really doing well and happy. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, how you've handled it since you've been out, because that was something I had to handle. And so that's something I'm going to hit you with a little bit when we get back. But congratulations on just
thank you.
Career, David.
Sounds good. It is great to see you. I'm glad to see somebody kept all their good-looking hair.
Wow.
I keep telling George it's blonde. He says it's white in the picture.
That's a nice color of blonde. I really like that.
Hey, Watson, so you'll know, because you may not have heard this, we have already discussed the fact that David, me, Doug Matthews used to do a Saturday show together, and it infuriated Doug. Well, it infuriated Doug that we had the nerve to talk about the Braves during that time.
You know what? We were not smart enough. All we had to do was say Mickey Mantle, Miami, Oklahoma, and then Doug would have been happy to talk about baseball. Yeah, that was it.
Okay, Watson, it'll be all yours. This is one of the greats. David Cutcliffe joining us as we start the show here on Main Street Media Television. You're watching the George Plaster Show. Okay, let's send it up to the plateau. Watson, I promise to stay out of this. How long do you think I can keep the promise?
30 seconds.
Go,
it's all George all too well, right?
Go,
it's all yours.
David, I know it was hard for me when I got out, and it's been 6 years now since I've been out. And I tried to stay involved some way athletically, football-wise. And I traveled with ESPN and was an analyst for 3 years, and then really been with George the last 3. Did you think about that before you took this spot? I knew you were going to maybe go to Texas as a possibility, and now with the SEC. Did you think that out and know that you were going to deal with it? How did you handle it?
Well, first of all, when you get ended before you're ready to be ended, you have to really manage yourself there.
Yeah.
And so that shock, I never believed in being just reactionary. I wanted to think a little bit, and I had people calling me, offering me jobs. I knew I didn't want to be anybody's analyst. I don't know what an analyst does exactly, but I wasn't going that route. I talked to some NFL teams, that I just wasn't overly impressed with the organization, and obviously I wouldn't say who. But and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Greg Sankey calls, and he said, "I've got an idea. I wish you would hear me out." I talked to Charlie Hussey, the deputy director, and they put together a little job description. And I said, "Well, that all maybe sounds good, but I'd like to see you guys in person." So I flew to Birmingham. And I've always told young people, Watson, I'm sure much like you, choose people, not places
Yes.
and positions. So I really like the people. I like Greg Sankey. I love the team he's put together. He surrounded himself with winners. And college football maybe needs a little insight from a coach or former coach now that can kind of tell them or help avoid the laws of unintended consequences that occur, right? You know what I'm saying with these decisions.
Absolutely.
So I'm happy with it, mostly because I'm not just involved and still around college football, that maybe I can contribute some small little piece to being a little better with what we need to see done.
Yeah. David, to me, Greg, making this position possible is fantastic. I think it's a great idea. And second, hiring you, there couldn't be a more perfect guy that's been on both sides of the fence, assistant head coach, and being a guy that always tried to do things right and tried to do things to make things better. So I think you're a perfect hire first. And then second, just having the position, I think is brilliant on his part. How exactly what are you going to be doing? How is he going to use you, David?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to all the institutions. I went in spring ball. I'm sitting down with coaches one on one. I've sat down with them collectively. We've got a little joint, text group that we all kind of keep each other informed. And this, I'm meeting with all the directors of football operations. If you want to talk to somebody to know what's going on in the program and what's missing or what's being needed. So I've developed a relationship with those folks. I'm going to continue to grow that. I want to be an advocate for coaches. I want to think like a coach, but I also want to be a conduit between the office and the coach in the office and trying to help build trust there because we're in a tough time. And that's just part of it. The other part is participating in some of these committees and things as far as you get into the way the NCAA legislation or the governance is put together. The higher you go up the food chain to decision makers, the further you get away from anybody that's ever had any boots on the ground, ever really worked with student athletes, with players, and if you will, in the football world. And so I've already had one meeting last week with a national committee, and I wasn't going to stay silent. When they were missing the mark, and I don't mean to be arrogant, but like you would know in a meeting when they said something that's outlandish as far as being functional with players and coaches. And so I was very appreciative that I think they listened. And so we got another meeting coming up, and then we're going to do one in August in person. And Commissioner alluded to all of these problems are complex. But I think having a coach that I've served on enough committees, I understand the administrative issues, the legal issues, so I'm listening to them, but I hope they continue to listen to the voice that I'm supposed to have of players and coaches, first players, because sometimes what seems to be best for them isn't. That locker room consists of a lot of players, not just stars. And so that's kind of what I'm doing, and we're painting the picture as we go. I want to say this real quick about Coach Brown. He was good enough to let me come into Rice and visit and get on the inside in meetings and learn from him. We weren't head-to-head enemies at that time at all. I'd been you couldn't stop his offenses, but that was one of the more memorable growing experience for me in all of my trips. I made a point. I visited Bill Walsh and the 49ers, and I spent a lot of my own money and time going around trying to learn from the best. And I did not have a better trip anywhere than Rice University with head coach Watson Brown. And I mean that. I
That
really
is
do
cool.
appreciate that.
David, that's neat of you to say that. I remember that like it was yesterday. Isn't it
I do
amazing?
too, but I'm telling you, it had a huge impact on me. You were not a good football coach. You're a great football coach. And you and I had one thing in common. We found a way to take jobs that were hard to win.
You're a little younger than me, bud. You just followed me.
Yeah, I tell you, hey, he's great. This is my idol. I'm going to go right behind Watson.
So I get blamed now.
Yeah, no, but you know, like I know, to help young people grow on and off the field, to find a way to have some success where maybe it hasn't been prevalent is more rewarding than anything else you can do in sports. It really is, and I really do appreciate your career.
Well, thank you, David. And my wife says you're nothing but an underdog. That's all you are. She said I married an underdog, but I agree with you 100%. Football's football. Oklahoma, you were at Tennessee, you go to Duke.
Yeah,
football's football. And you were a high school coach. I was on the Division II level. I mean,
yes.
What I learned was it don't matter. It's all the same. Coaching's coaching. Players are players. The higher level, better player, if you want to say that, is no different than the Division II guy.
No,
it's coaching kids. And honestly, David, that's the part I miss, and I think that's what you'll miss.
No question. But you said something. Go ahead.
I said I missed the camaraderie of game plans with coaches, and I missed the kids. Just the kids.
Yeah, you that's it about it. It's not the first downs or the touchdowns.
No.
It's the relationships. But you just said something extremely important that's no different from Division II to the highest level, Oklahoma, or where you were and where I was. Well, we got to maintain that.
Yeah.
We don't want a group playing for money and a group playing for the love of the game, because we're going to lose the value that you got as a player. Okay, we'll lose that value that football gives young people. We can't do that. It's not fair to those players for it to turn into something that it's not. So that's why I'm passionate about doing what I'm doing, because you're right. Football is football at the high school level, at any division, and teammates. And I believe this: the best thing anybody can ever say to a former football player is to come up and say, "Hey, man, you were the best teammate I ever had."
Yeah.
What could be said better? Not that you scored more touchdowns than anybody else. You were absolutely the best teammate I ever had. I don't want to see that lost in the locker room.
Boy, David, just stay on that, because I think that's it. When I hear coaches now say, when we're in the transfer portal, the first thing they ask me is, how much money am I going to make? That's a different world now. They used to say, where do I fit in? Does the offense fit me? Are we going to win? Can I get around the team a little bit, teammates, and see what kind of culture you have? And when the first question now is, how much money am I going to make? Man, that throws a red flag up to me.
Yeah, and I don't think that those programs or those young people will be successful with that path. And I think it's unfair to that young person that they're faced even thinking that, and they have outside influences that are pushing it. That's not okay. You choose people, you choose a program for the culture, for your teammates, for the opportunity you may have to have a great career that you earn. Name, image, and likeness is okay. That means you have a great name and an image and a likeness that somebody else is making profit off of. You should experience that, but it should not be an offer. It should not be a reason for a high school player or a transfer to choose a school. We're not the NFL. Don't want to be and don't need to be. So we'll see what happens. We got a lot of work to do.
Well, thank goodness you're part of this, and right there in the middle of this as a coach in those in the SEC. I thought this was a fantastic hire when I saw it. I say, perfect guy, because you've seen it all, and you care about the kids and you care about football. And there's not enough that do that. I'm not taking shots at anybody, but David, there's not enough that feel that way. And I've always thought you're one of those guys.
Well, thank you very much. You know, when Coach Brown and I got in the game, George, I never asked Johnny Majors what he was going to pay me. I didn't know it was basically nothing.
Yeah.
And you know what he told me, Watson? You'll appreciate this. He said, I don't think it's healthy for a young single assistant to be making too much money. So we were out recruiting about 2 years later when the bump hadn't really come, you know. And I said, Coach Majors, I don't think I have thanked you properly. He said, for what? And I said, well, I am the healthiest football coach in all of college football. And he looked at me. I didn't know if he was going to kick me out of the car or fire me. He said, I hear you. You know, I think I got all the way up to $21,000 a year at that point. So,
oh, man. That sounds, I can see him right now saying that. I mean, we both knew him so well.
Yeah.
And what a good man he was and a character. I just every day when I was around him was a different day. Have I got time for another one, George?
I don't. We're getting the signal that we got to go to the bullpen. He's got another one of these to do. He stuck around with us for 2 segments. Tell us why.
Well, because I love you guys. I do. I'm at home. And everybody wants to be on Main Street, baby. We got to be on. I grew up back street, David, and now I'm on Main Street. I'm in a good spot.
That's got to be a promo, doesn't it?
There you go.
Thank you for doing this.
Appreciate
you
it.
are awesome.
You are. You're a Hall of Famer, period. Same. You are too, Watson Brown. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, David. Good luck, man. If anything I can ever do, holler.
I'll be hollering.
So much fun to have David Cutcliffe on with us. We'll go to the break, and we'll be back.